Hi Davis, thank you for joining us today with a welcome Taproom Talks. If you could just share who you are and what it is you do.
So Davis Larrsen, I'm the CEO for Proserv, headquartered here in Aberdeen.
Excellent. And you've been in the industry for a long time, and you're not actually from Aberdeen, so we'll start with that. So how did you get into Aberdeen and where did you come from?
Yeah, you're right. I have been in the industry a long time, about 30 years. I'm from the northeast of England originally, just between Sunderland and Durham, and moved up here when I was 13. My dad was an electrician in the mines, and after the miners' strike in the 80s, he got a job with British Gas up here at St Fergus. So I moved up here when I was, I think, 13. We lived in Mintlaw, and that was my first kind of experience of northeast Scotland. And looking back, I have to say, it was an interesting time, 13-year-old, being one of the few English people in Mintlaw Academy.
Yeah, a very different accent.
With a very different accent, and
How did that go down?
it went down well with some people and not well with other people, as you can imagine. But it was a great introduction to life in the northeast of Scotland. And then I've moved away a few times since then, but always come back and ended up, meeting my wife at school. We ended up getting married, a few years later. And so whilst I've moved away, for personal reasons or for work reasons over the years, I guess because my wife is from Aberdeen, we've always come back here.
Fantastic.
So I've probably lived in Aberdeen more than I've lived in anywhere else in the world.
Okay. And how did you move into oil and gas, or how did you move into the energy sector?
Yeah, so I think when I was about early to mid-20s, I'd had 5 or 6 jobs in the northeast of England for various manufacturing service companies and was looking to move back up to Aberdeen.
Okay.
And it was actually Thorpe Malloy put me forward for the job at Schlumberger.
Right.
And they said, if you can last 2 years with Schlumberger, you'll make it in oil field services, because if you can last with them, you'll last with anybody.
Yeah.
And so they got me a job with Schlumberger up here, and that's when I moved for the second time from Sunderland back up to Aberdeen. So I must have been 25, 26 at the time.
And what was your role with Schlumberger?
I was a financial analyst. So I'm an accountant by background.
Yeah.
So went in as a financial analyst, know nothing about oil and gas. And it was real kind of thrown at the deep end, real learning curve.
Yeah.
But I learned so much at that time as well.
You're obviously now CEO of Proserv, so you've had a lot of leadership experience in that time. How did you go from financial analyst to CEO?
It wasn't, I guess, a straight line, this is what I'm going to do. I probably always had an ambition to, run my own business or be my own boss.
Why?
Probably because I thought it'd be a great idea when I was younger. Now that I'm CEO, I realise it's a lot harder than what people think.
Yeah.
But I think how I probably got here, a lot of that was due to mentoring and coaching that I got through people at various stages of my career, and people maybe exposing me to opportunities to push me, test me, and sometimes putting me in roles that I didn't think I was actually ready for, but making me do things that weren't necessarily my natural forte. Yeah, to put you into your uncomfortable zone.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, I think the more you become comfortable at picking your hand up and trying different things and realizing that it's okay. That's the way to learn. And sometimes you'll make some mistakes.
Yeah.
But as long as you learn from those mistakes and don't keep repeating them, it's the best way to learn. So I probably had some very good mentors through my career that helped me on this journey to where I am now as CEO.
Yeah. And going back to your younger days, so were you involved in sports, basketball, football?
Football and cycling was probably my thing.
Yeah.
Skateboarding, certainly when I was growing up in the northeast of England.
Yeah.
And running. So I was always quite a keen, middle distance runner.
Right.
I was quite, skinny until I got to my probably mid-30s and then started putting a few pounds on.
Yeah.
But, half marathons, that kind of stuff. I've done a couple of marathons in my time, but, nothing particularly competitive in terms of times. But I've always liked running, cycling, football.
And do any of the personal habits help you in your work environment, if you had a leadership role? Is there anything you take for the either team sports or
probably,
or being personal and have to be there running on your own or whatever? There's a few personal sports there where you get no support.
Correct. So I find running running and or cycling, if it used to be BMX, but now I prefer road cycling. I find it a great way to think.
Okay.
If I've got something at work that's bothering me, going for a run or a cycle on my own is the best way to kind of process those thoughts in my mind.
Yeah.
And almost subconsciously work through the problem. So I use it as a bit of an escape mechanism at times as well. And I probably use it as a way to try and de-stress.
Okay.
So I remember in the olden days when we had a dog, if I come home from work and I'm a bit too highly strung,
Go for a walk.
my wife would say, take the dog, go for a walk, and don't come back until you've calmed down, until you've come back down to our pace of life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd come in the house after a week in, say, Houston, and I was like a whirlwind, and I was still in work mode.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how disruptive that was to the family.
Yeah.
Because I'm still talking to them as if I'm at work.
Yeah. It's in your own head.
Totally. So they would say, get the dog, go for a walk, or go for a run, go for a cycle, and when you've calmed down, then you can come back in the house.
Are we in Houston for quite a while, or?
But I mean, we lived in Houston for 2 years.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm just using Houston as an example of...
You obviously travelled around, so you spent a bit of time in different locations.
I've been lucky to travel with my work all over the world. There's not many places I haven't been to, and we've lived here.
Very much a benefit of working in the energy sector.
Totally, and not only for yourself, but for your family, your kids and everything as well, the experiences they get. So, like I said, I started with Schlumberger up here. We then went to Houston for a couple of years. We then had 2 years in London with Schlumberger.
Yeah.
Then 2 years in London. Then I moved to the Middle East, Abu Dhabi, again with Schlumberger. That was really interesting, looking after the Emirates, Oman, Qatar and Yemen.
Yeah.
Going down to Yemen for budget meetings for a week.
Yeah. Very different.
Totally different. And I'm really glad I got the opportunity to do things like that.
Yeah.
Being asked if I want to hang around over the weekend and go up into the mountains and shoot AK-47s.
Yeah.
For the Schlumberger security officer to say,
Very different experience.
No, you can't. You're too high a risk. But then that was great. And then, moved back to Aberdeen. But I've travelled with my job. And I enjoy travelling in my personal life as well. Pretty much all over the world. So travel's probably one of my biggest hobbies.
Fantastic.
So I do a lot with work, but I do it
the best
outside of
place you've been?
I love Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
We've done a few cycling holidays the last few years, my wife and I, and Vietnam was really interesting. Cambodia, Cuba was also really interesting as a cycling holiday.
Yeah.
So a bit off the beaten track. Kathleen's made me promise not to do it so much because the quality of accommodation when you're in the jungle tends not to be that great.
How long is a cycling holiday? How long would you spend? Or how many miles would you cycle?
The mileage varies, but it's typically a week.
Okay.
So you're going from place to place. You've got a support vehicle, so you drop your bag in the support vehicle every morning. You cycle to the next place. Typically, if it's on mountain bikes, it might be anything from 40 to 70 miles.
Wow.
So it's a whole day.
Yeah.
But it's a way of seeing a country off the beaten track, in its kind of natural state.
Seeing things you'd never
less
see.
touristy.
Yeah.
But it's quite hard going as well.
Yeah.
And quite often you might be in a homestay.
Okay.
You're really...
So you're done
roughing it.
when you get home?
Well, normally Kathleen makes me book a really nice hotel for 3 or 4 days at the end of it, a bit of a reward.
No bike.
No bike. And depending on where you are as well, Cambodia, in the cities, the 2 big cities, the food and everything was great. But once you go outside the 2 main cities,
it's not great.
You just eat whatever you can get.
Yeah.
And it was the same in Cuba. I remember, that was part of a group tour.
Okay.
So there's about 25 of us.
Right. From all over the world.
All over the world. Yeah. So you get there and there's 23 other people like you've never met before.
Yeah.
So you meet all kinds of kind of characters and individuals. And I find that quite stimulating and interesting.
100%.
You don't get on with all of them.
Yeah.
But you soon realise who you've got a bit of a rapport and a connection with. But I remember one day we went to a restaurant in the evening as a group with the kind of team who were taking us. We're given the menu and we're all looking at the menu thinking, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that. And then they come out and say, well, at the market today, all we got was 3 chickens, 18 eggs and 3 potatoes. So
the menu's pointless.
So, can I take the menus back? And this is what you're all getting. And you just have to kind of do it with the flow.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of quite okay with that kind of situation. Yeah. So I guess what it means is, I say this, it means you become quite flexible and adaptable and not too stuck in your ways.
Yeah.
And linking back to, some of your earlier questions, that's maybe something that as I've got older, I've just become a bit more comfortable with being like that.
Just part of your style, I guess.
Perhaps, yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm still a planner.
Yeah.
the family will kind of mock at how much I plan the holidays, and I am the holiday planner.
Okay.
But I can cope with flexibility as well in certain environments.
Okay. Well, I'm the opposite. I'm no planner. I'm chaos.
Okay.
Like,
See, I couldn't cope with that.
yeah, just manic.
Yeah.
So definitely no planning, but excellent. So with regards to Proserv, so obviously the energy transition and everything else, and Proserv being an oil and gas specifically company moving into or navigating the shift to traditional oil. How what's your plan there, or what technologies are Proserv using as a business to help?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start off by saying it's proving hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy making the pivot into renewables. But at our core, we're a controls technology company. So subsea control systems, topside control systems. We do other things as well around sampling, measurement, intervention workover, and so on. But at our core, we're a controls technology company. So our first foray into renewables was through what we call ECG, which is cable monitoring.
Yeah.
So it's effectively trying to provide a cable monitoring system to the offshore power cables that connect the wind farms up. Because cable failures is the single biggest issue affecting offshore wind.
Yeah.
And it's effectively like driving a car without a dashboard.
Right.
People are pushing power through their cables with no kind of dashboard or performance criteria to tell you what's happening. So then it's no surprise when the cable fails for various reasons.
Why does that happen?
Because people don't know that they're pushing it to its point of exceeding its ratings and its stress areas. Maybe you're pushing too much power through it.
But who doesn't know? The manufacturers know.
Well, the manufacturers know when they build it what it's capable of, but then it gets provided to another company who will go and install that.
Yeah.
You might exceed the bend radius of that cable when you're installing it. You might not exceed the bend radius, but you might come so close that you damage the protective sheath that protects it.
Yeah.
And therefore that's a weak spot.
Okay.
And then if you've got so much power coming through, you're burning away that weak spot. Before you know it, the cable's fried.
So how does that fried cable become identified?
When the cable fails.
Okay.
Because once it's fried, you can't bring power through the cable.
Yeah.
So we're trying to push this solution called ECG, which effectively takes a series of measurements through sensors, electrical, temperature and acoustic, to tell you the behavioral characteristics of that cable.
Yeah.
And then a bit like your dashboard in the
So
car.
you try to preempt it.
You're trying to preempt it. Because you can see there's a weak spot here.
Yeah.
The temperature is rising. If you don't ramp back the power going through your cable, you're at risk of frying your cable.
Yeah.
So rather than frying it, then being without cable until you can get a replacement, which could be 2 or 3 years, and the cost of trying to replace that.
So is that a software?
Yes, it's software that goes through the sensors, but you still need a way of measuring what's happening.
Yeah.
And then the software, effectively with an algorithm, allows you to say, well, in previous 100 instances of this happening, once you get to this point, the cable will fail.
Yeah.
So make a proactive decision to, for example, scale back the power going through the cable to, let's say, 80% capacity, but then instead of the cable failing, it'll last another 6 months.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do that. Wind turbine controls is another area that we're trying to get into.
And that's not just here. This
is globally I'm referring to. Yeah. So we are very much, in the subsea space in particular. People talk about subsea trees.
Yeah.
We're tree agnostic. We don't care whose tree it is.
Yeah.
We just focus on the control system because that's effectively like the brains or the supercomputer that drives everything.
Yeah.
So we're totally tree agnostic. And if we look at the offshore wind space, you've got all of the big wind turbine OEMs who build these things. But when the 5-year warranty expires, almost every operator of a wind turbine wants to go to an independent company to service, maintain, and upgrade the control systems.
Yeah.
Very much like what's happened in oil and gas. So that's what we're trying to get into, because then you're not focusing on all this other big, heavy steel and big hardware.
Yeah.
It's just the control system.
Yeah.
Because the control system gives you access to the sensors and the data to tell you what's happening in that infrastructure.
And how easy to get into that work?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
And you've kind of mentioned before the difficulty or the being aware of just public abandoning oil and gas as such and managing that transition.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see things at the moment?
I think in the North Sea it's incredibly tough.
Yeah.
I don't personally agree with the political position that's been taken over the last 2 or 3 years in the North Sea.
Yeah.
The fiscal uncertainty that we've had since the EPL was brought in.
Yeah.
how unattractive this basin is now to investors globally.
Yeah.
You know, it's a competitive environment. And if you're a bank or a pension fund or an investor looking to get return on your income,
This is not the place.
the reality is the last place you're going to put it is the UK sector of the North Sea.
And what's the challenge then for Proserv as a business in this market?
Well, we're globally, but
Yeah.
we are headquartered in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
You know, we've got 45 people in our headquarters in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And as the UK sector becomes a smaller part of your business, justifying keeping the headquarters here becomes ever increasingly harder.
Yeah.
In addition, we've got businesses here in Aberdeen that have serviced the North Sea Basin for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
They are now having to look to work in, you know, West Africa, Brazil, Southeast Asia. So you're sending people and equipment all over the world to try and win work.
Yeah.
You're dealing with different competitors. There's a higher cost perspective of that. So, you know, because everybody wants local content. So whether it's West Africa, Brazil, Southeast Asia, they all want you, well, you need a legal entity. You need to employ local people. So it's putting jobs at risk. And until that renewables transition really kicks in, the reality is there's very little in the North Sea. So one of the things I talk about in work right now is bridging that gap. The gap between the reality of today with very little North Sea oil and gas activity and the promise and the potential of strong renewables. But that timeline isn't 6 weeks or 6 months. It's years.
Yeah. So
you can't keep people gainfully employed with nothing to do.
No, you can't. And that's in any business. But how do you try and keep a culture within a company then when you're also at the same time, and people are also aware, it's in the news everywhere. Anybody talks about here. You go on LinkedIn, anything, it's constant. How do you drive a culture within a business that you're trying to grow globally and have that culture, whereas at the same time there's the fear of no jobs or reducing headcount?
We're quite honest. I mean, every year we sit and refresh our 5-year strategic plan.
Yeah.
And it's effectively where we step back and say, right, what's changed in the market? What's changed with the competition? What's the clients looking for today?
Yeah.
What's changed from this time last year? So you're tweaking your plan accordingly. But we're open with our employees around what the challenges are that we're facing and what the options are that we can do to try and address them. Sometimes that might mean you've got to let people go at different parts of the business at different times. You know, if you've got a quiet period in one part of the business over here, you'll try and redeploy resources to keep them busy over here, but it isn't always possible.
No.
But I think about, you know, being honest with people, treating people with respect, and ultimately treating people the way that you would want to be treated yourself if you were in that situation.
Yeah.
That's what we try and do to protect the culture.
And what about, same question, but you've got global offices. I've been fortunate to be in a couple. I've been in the US. I've been in your Saudi office as well. How do you take this business, which is regional here, headquarters here in Aberdeen, and then try and grow that elsewhere in different countries? When you're maybe going into the countries with little work, you're trying to build the headcount, keep that headcount. Work will fluctuate as a new business in the locations. How do you maintain that?
It's a good point because we're 800 people globally. So about 100 in the US, about 330 in the UK across various sites, about 150 or so in Norway across 2 sites, and then about 250, somebody will probably tell me that doesn't add up to 800, spread between the Middle East and Chennai.
Yeah.
So we've got about 14 sites around the world, but we've got multiple different nationalities, therefore cultures, different personality types. So what we've focused on for a number of years is what we call our fresh values.
Yeah.
And it's really about behaviours.
Yeah.
And they've always been some kind of guiding principles that we've put in place. And when we've had to let people go, if it's not for a downturn, if it's for individual performance, it's not about individual performance in terms of somebody missing their numbers.
Yeah.
Typically it's because people aren't living the values as we would expect them to do. It's another way of it is, you know, how do people behave when they think nobody's watching?
Yeah.
And so it's a big thing for us, and it has been for a number of years. You know, we tweak it now and again, but they fundamentally stay the same. And one of the things we're trying to do right now is take those and go to a deeper level in what's called winning behaviours.
Yeah.
So we just got the global leadership team of Proserv together about 4 weeks ago now, actually, in Norwich. So the top 35 leaders globally, and we brought Sir Clive Woodward in to do basically did a day and a half workshop with us.
Yeah.
And this goes all the way back to what he did, not only with the English rugby team, but with the Great Britain Olympics teams as well, where he used those teams to drive a set of winning behaviours that almost becomes a rule book.
Yeah.
And the team have to own those behaviours.
Yeah.
And so with 800 people, multiple locations, multiple cultures, nationalities, therefore different norms of behaviour, we use these values and what we're now developing as winning behaviours is a way to try and harmonise everything so people know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Yeah.
But so that's what we try and do to keep that right and keep that culture intact. But it's not a job that's ever really finished.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, you can undo a huge amount of good work with one
Short period.
poor decision,
Yeah.
behaviour, action. So we've always trying to improve it, holding the mirror up to ourselves.
Yeah.
And the most powerful thing is, because we all make mistakes, I know I certainly do, is when you do make a mistake and you fail to live up to those values, to say, I messed up here.
Yeah.
That was not an example of winning behaviour.
Yeah.
And then you need to understand, well, why was that? Is it because I'd had a bad day? Had a falling out with the family?
Yeah.
You know, was I stressed? Was I tired? What was it?
Yeah.
And we try and spend a lot of time doing that.
Yeah. Well, we had Ray Riddock on the podcast as well, and he said exactly the same thing. He said it's trying to live by it and trying to understand what people do when the OAM's in his bed.
Yes.
It's,
The same thing as when you think nobody's watching.
yeah, exactly.
Correct.
The same thing. So how do you empower the level below you, your management team, to go and drive these fresh values?
Well, I mean, yeah, they are all accountable for their business, and I expect them all to not be role models, but to live those values every day. So with the exercise we're just kicking off now with Sir Clive Woodward of developing these winning behaviours, it's not me who owns them, it's the teams who own them.
Yeah.
So it's the 35 people that were in the room. You know, we all brainstormed over a day and a half, what should some examples of these winning behaviours be? They're then going to take that and flesh that out into a bit more detail. And in the end, we'll effectively have a written statement that says, right, here's what we agree. And then once we've got that for the 35 people, we'll then say, right, now how do we roll that out in Saudi, in Houston, in Trondheim, and in a way that overcomes the cultural biases and norms and variances in the various cultures we have, so that it becomes a guiding set of documents.
Yeah.
And that might be, 11 to 12 to 15 winning behaviours. It might be 20 to 30 to 40.
Yeah.
And there might be some local ones to cater for various
Different
cultural norms and so on, or different businesses.
Yeah.
But effectively, it will be like in an app.
Yeah.
And it'll be something that people say, right, these are the winning behaviours that we need to hold ourselves to accountable. And I expect my leadership team to do that with their teams and know that that mirror is being held up to themselves as well.
And if employees are not following their values, what's the structure there? Do you exit them from the business?
Not immediately.
Yeah.
The first thing you do is, Kenny, why aren't you living these values?
Yeah.
What's wrong?
But it has to be a point where they need to be on board, or it's not going to work.
Oh, totally. So if people are not doing it initially, you have a conversation. Do you understand this is what we're looking for?
This is Proserv.
This is our DNA. This is what we want. Do you feel comfortable with that DNA?
Yeah.
If you don't, well, what would you change about it?
Yeah.
So you try and go through that conversation. And most people are not inherently bad.
Yeah.
Most people don't come in and intentionally make mistakes and mess things up. But like I said, maybe they were bored.
Yeah.
Maybe they were tired. Maybe they've been, on a rig for 18 hours shift and they're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
Maybe they've become complacent because you're doing the same thing over and over again and you cut corners. So you have to understand what caused it and then have a conversation. But ultimately, if the person keeps making the same issues and breaching our values all the time, then ultimately the impact is you ask them to leave the business. It doesn't happen that often, but it probably happens more in Proserv than, for example, you're not meeting your numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you're not meeting your numbers, you should be able to explain why you're not meeting your numbers.
Yeah.
And we don't.
And that might be a business case for that.
Totally. The clients put a project on hold. It was out with our control. Okay, we'd rather have known a bit earlier, but we tend not to let people go for that.
Yeah.
But we have let people go over the years. Not many, but we have for people who can't live the values on a day-to-day basis. Because if they don't fundamentally believe in them, it's only a matter of time before they're in a stressful situation, there's a bump in the road, and they act in a way that you do not feel fairly reflects the ethos and values of the 800 people across Proserv.
Yeah, fantastic. So one thing that's been big for OGV and allowed us to build is collaboration. So working with lots of different partners to do lots of things. I would imagine within a company with 800 people in different countries, collaboration is quite a key thing for your business, whether that's internally or externally working with maybe technology partners or whatever.
Correct.
How do you drive that, and how important is collaboration to Proserv?
It is very important, and we've just gone through a restructuring internally where we've moved away from site P&Ls to more global business unit P&Ls.
Okay.
And part of that was to try and improve internal collaboration, because I was worried that we were having individual site P&Ls and therefore site silos.
Yeah.
So about 2 years ago, we developed this phrase called Proserv Site Self.
Right.
And if every decision is made from a Proserv perspective, you'll tend to come to the right outcome, as opposed to if you're in Houston and you make a decision that's right for Houston on a local basis, but actually it might be the wrong decision for Great Yarmouth.
Yeah.
So we came up with that slogan a couple of years ago, but it didn't quite get the desired impact that we thought it would.
Yeah.
So in Q4 of last year, Q1 of this year, we've just gone through a big restructuring and going to global business unit offerings. And that's partially to try and improve the collaboration internally.
Yeah.
But it's also a big issue externally as well. So if I go back to what I talked about, ECG and the cable monitoring system, probably the best example of an external collaboration that worked really well is with our partner Synaptech.
Okay.
That is a key part of their technology that's in this ECG offering.
Yeah.
And ultimately that started off, we were introduced to them by a third party, told these are some guys you should go and speak to because we think this technology will be useful for what you're trying to do.
So who brought them to you?
It might have been Scottish Enterprise.
Okay.
I can't remember them.
They're a Scottish startup?
They were a Scottish startup. They're not a startup anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, University of Strathclyde spin-off with some really fantastic people, really strong technology. We probably met them 7 or 8 years ago. And where that's evolved to over that time is we ended up taking a small equity stake in that business.
Yep.
I sit on the board of that business. And we now try and have a culture where, you know, if it's a Proserv and a Synaptech person sitting having a conversation, in theory, you shouldn't be able to tell who's wearing the Proserv t-shirt and who's wearing the Synaptech t-shirt.
Yeah.
And when we did our 600 miles for mines cycle ride last year, there was half a dozen of the Synaptech folks joined the Proserv team and came on it. And Dave Pratt, their chairman, you know, he volunteered to drive one of the support vehicles for a week.
Fantastic.
So, you know, we have the shareholding, we have the seat in the board, but more importantly was that whole culture and ethos of sharing the values and treating everybody as if you're one team.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best example of external collaboration that we've done. It doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of other great partners. You know, Trendsetter would be another great one where we work very closely with them in various markets. But it's probably built on personal relationships and trust and having those honest conversations.
Yeah.
And there's some examples where it hasn't worked.
This is an industry built on personal relationships.
Totally. Because people need to know that they can depend on you.
Yeah.
And that when they hit a bump in the road, you're going to help them in some way.
Yeah. For sure.
They might not always like your answer. You might not be able to help them, but you've got to be truthful and honest with it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a big thing for us, and sometimes it works better than others, obviously.
And last one on culture as such, but when it comes to culture, is there any absolute non-negotiables that, you know, whether that be part of your fresh or just anything, you as a person, you think,
Tell the truth.
Anybody within the business?
Tell the truth. If people are lying or hiding the truth, then there's just no coming back from that. I mean, I always say nobody likes bad news, but hidden bad news is even worse. So if something is going wrong and that it's going to impact the business, the sooner we share that, the better. Even if that's, you know, a client deciding to cancel a project, therefore the outlook looks bad, or if somebody's got something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, if we've manufactured something and we've made a quality issue, don't try and brush it under the carpet.
And have you experienced any almost disasters or difficult decisions on the back of something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Over the years, definitely. it's train wrecks don't happen overnight.
Yeah.
They happen in slow motion.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the organisation, people will have seen the red alert to show that the train wreck was happening.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they didn't feel comfortable to put their hand up and say something's not right here.
Yeah.
So
how important is that then as part of the culture, trying to get people to have that confidence to stand up? We spoke to Bob Keeler in one of these podcasts, and he mentioned that when he was at Wood Group, he was on the phone hanging out of the banister, and one of his team came over, and they never said it until they just pulled him back from the banister and went away. He said, I laughed about it, but when I went back in, he said, I went down and got them a box of cakes for the reception and took them back up, because having the balls to actually do that to the CEO, other people either would have said nothing or maybe just waited till they came off the phone. But the values and the process within the business was that that's not allowed.
And I would say that's a great example of psychological safety.
Yeah.
And it's a phrase that a lot of people talk about, but if Bob didn't have that, or the organisation didn't have that right level of psychological safety, that person wouldn't have felt comfortable to
do that.
To do that.
Yeah.
And it's a good example where you're constantly working on it. But if Bob had turned around and reacted angrily to that situation, that would have destroyed the psychologically safe environment.
It would have completely killed it.
And that's where I think you've got to be very careful how you are. And if you do sometimes react, tetchily or a bit short because you've had a bad day or you're in a bad mood, the sooner you realise that and kind of hold your hands up and say, hey, I was out of order there, the better. But over the years, there's numerous times when we've had to have ongoing conversations where these things happen because things go wrong.
Yeah.
People make mistakes.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
It's quite often dangerous. It's engineering, challenge and complexity. You're often trying to do something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
In high pressure, difficult, could be vast extremes of temperature, anything. So, and everybody behaves differently when you're under that kind of pressure.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that.
Yeah. And moving away from the negative stuff, but on a positive, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for the energy sector over the next 5 or 10 years?
I think the overall energy transition as part of a mixed portfolio is one of the biggest transitions and one of the biggest positives. As I said, in the UK, I've got this particular concern about the gap that we're facing between the reality of today and what we want. I look at most of the other major energy basins, and the US is maybe a bit exceptional because of some of the recent decisions since President Trump came to power. But if I hold up Norway as an example, they're proudly saying that they support the energy transition, but they will produce the last drop of oil in the world.
Yeah.
And so they're not turning off oil and gas because they recognise the world needs it. But at the same time, they are aggressively pushing into renewables.
And we're constantly seeing
as part of a balanced transition because the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. So you need a base load of predictability for people to, turn the lights on, make the tea at home every night, watch the TV.
Yeah.
All these things that people take for granted that don't realise are fueled by oil and gas.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the biggest potential opportunity for the wider industry today. But in the UK, I think we're stymied by this every 4 to 5 year process where people can fall into the trap of telling the public what they want to hear to win the votes.
Yeah.
Instead of a 20-year energy policy that almost all the major political parties sign up to and saying, whatever happens, this is the strategic direction for the UK.
Yeah.
So we all try and win elections based on the stuff that affects people's quality of life every day. Putting food on the table, paying your mortgage, paying utility bills. But there should be a 20-year energy strategy that spans the governance.
Yeah.
And every 2 or 3 years, you're looking at it and you're constantly pushing it out 20 years.
Like you are within your business.
Like what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow there'll be a different CEO in Proserv.
Yeah.
And then they need to ask themselves the same thing. And you can't totally change direction just because there's a new CEO, for example.
Yeah.
And I think the UK, from a government perspective, should fundamentally be the same, especially when it comes to something as important as an energy policy with the backdrop of global warming, people being able to put food on the plates, energy security as well, the balance of payments that's affected today. So I'm very much answering from a UK perspective.
Yeah, that's fine. And we'll go for a global energy market then. What opportunities could be massive for Proserv going forward? where could Proserv add real benefit?
I think, I've touched on offshore wind, and I think wind turbine control systems, both in fixed offshore wind and floating offshore wind, having the control system being OEM agnostic to the rest of the turbine, I think is a huge opportunity. It's effectively what we're already doing in the subsea space. The majority of control systems deployed in subsea oil and gas are typically obsolete within 4 to 5 years. And what that means is when that control system for that subsea well fails, you typically can't upgrade it. So you run it until it fails, then you shut the well in.
That's it.
Yeah, what we can do at Proserv, we can effectively perform what we call brain surgery or ACT, and we replace the electronics module to keep that well afloat.
Right.
Of the 6,000 live oil and gas wells around the world, roughly half of them have got control systems on them that are obsolete.
Wow.
So unless somebody can address that issue, which is what we're trying to do, then those oil and gas reserves are just going to dwindle.
Shrink.
And unless the sun starts shining a lot more and the wind's going to be a lot more predictable, where we're going to get that base load of power from?
Yeah.
So that is probably the biggest growth area for Proserv in our traditional markets. And then offshore wind and renewables, like I said, from a turbine control perspective, is probably the big thing in renewables.
Just when you guys have opened in different locations, has it been on the back of a client, or have you made a strategic decision to go into a location?
Typically on the back of a client,
Yeah.
or a demand from a certain market
Yeah.
is what's driven us. It can sometimes be a specific project, but that's effectively a client as well. So yeah, I mean, right now we're getting pulled into, Brazil, West Africa,
market.
and a lot of clients asking us when you're going to have a legal entity, when you're going to have a rooftop.
Yeah.
When you're going to employ people.
There's a lot to do in order to do that.
But you're right, there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
And it's a big investment. So the conversation is, well, okay, Mr. Client, we'll create the legal entity, we'll start hiring people, but what work are you going to give us?
Yeah. There has to be something.
There's got to be something that's reciprocal.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're not happy with your suppliers, I will come into Brazil, we'll set up a facility, but you need to give me a framework agreement or something, otherwise how am I going to pay these guys?
All these different locations have all got different challenges.
Totally.
We spent some time in West Africa the last year or so, and we're doing more. I was in Rio last year, but I spoke to some other companies in Rio, and they found it really challenging to get kit back in Rio. And other ones we spoke to, they found it difficult to get money out of country. So there's lots of different challenges that people...
Totally. And it's interesting because I've been in Proserv 15 years, and we've always resisted having a presence in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a dinner in Houston probably about 10 years ago, and there's maybe 15 people around the table, and we were the only people that didn't have a facility in Brazil. And when we asked the question to everybody who had a facility in Brazil, would you do it again? They almost all said no.
Yeah.
Because the return was not worth.
Yeah.
Well, the ultimate return they got in investment wasn't worth it. But I think we're now in Proserv at a point where we're getting so many clients asking us to be down there, we almost have to do it.
Yeah. I think I spoke to Prosafe a couple of years ago, and they were saying basically the insurance was so high. Things like theft, or when they actually went to view the buildings that the things were supposed to be in, there was no windows, nothing. It's just absolute...
It's different environments.
Almost. Yeah, you would never imagine it here. You'd never get away with it here. But looking at, obviously we have a supply chain here it's a fantastic supply chain in Aberdeen, but also for the UK oil and gas. For companies who are within oil and gas, there's a big challenge for these companies to move into renewables if they want grants or funding, or to increase the value of their company if they're looking to sell as more valuable as a renewable company. What would you say is the way to go, or what would be a successful transition for a supply chain company? And I know, okay, the supply chain is wide and varied from fabrication to nuts and bolts, but in general, what would be your advice for a company looking to move from oil and gas to renewables?
To give advice, I guess I'd rather be in a position where Proserv would be more successful in making this transition, because we found it incredibly hard.
Well, you said that at the start.
Yeah, and it's whether it's raising bank finance.
Yeah.
A lot of banks and investors don't want to invest in you when you're oil and gas. They only want to invest in you after you've completed the transition. So the amount of acquisitions we've looked at in renewables that to accelerate that process, but they have a higher multiple because the renewables, everybody wants them. And the banks will say, well, once you've done the first, I'll come and help you with the second.
Yeah.
So it's difficult.
Yeah.
But you've got to find a way to try and transition that. But it's a bit like a piece of elastic.
Yeah.
You need the oil and gas business to pay for it.
Yeah.
But you've got to be careful that that piece of elastic doesn't stretch too far. And then there's examples I see. For example, let's just say that I mean, it's not what Proserv do, but let's say I run a business that paints oil rigs.
Mm-hmm.
If tomorrow I'm going off and I'm painting wind turbines, is that really a pivot into renewables? The thing you're painting is just something different.
Different bit of metal.
So there's things that some companies can do that, but that will help them to tick a box.
Yeah.
For example, for certain parties to say, you've been successful with that transition.
Yeah.
But does it fundamentally change what that business is?
Yeah. It's
No, it's a painting business.
Yeah.
So I think it's harder for companies like Proserv where it's a technology, because therefore there's a higher barrier to entry and it takes longer. So I don't think I'm best placed to kind of say what a good example is. And there's lots of good examples of companies who have made that transition, but maybe in less technology focused services.
Yeah.
But and we could do that, and maybe you could argue we should have done that in Proserv. But it just doesn't feel right to me that, if we'd gone out and hired a whole heap of painters to stick with that, or rope access people, that's not our DNA. We're not a rope access company.
Yeah.
And there's lots of successful companies who do that today.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't they not do that?
Yeah.
But it's not right for Proserv. So you've got to find what is the DNA of your organization, what's the skill set, and that transition for different companies will look and feel different.
Yeah.
And you have to work that out for yourselves.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And for a government policy point, if there was one thing you can do to affect change and improve things as they are, what would it be?
It would be that 20-year energy policy that all the major political parties in the UK sign up to and say, right, maybe every 5 years or every 2 years, whatever, maybe we're going to review this. But whoever's in power, this is the strategy.
Yeah.
And that should include oil and gas, renewables, nuclear, everything. That is probably the single biggest thing that I would like to see us have in place.
Fantastic. And just a couple of final questions. When you're not at Proserv, what do you do?
I like to walk.
Yeah.
I like to exercise many different types.
You mentioned cycling around the world.
So, well, not around the world. That would be a bit ambitious, but we in
a lot of locations.
Correct. Yeah. We did this 600-mile cycle ride for Aberdeen to Great Yarmouth last year.
Yeah.
With Proserv and Snaptech, which is probably up there in my top 5 life experiences.
Wow.
That feeling of camaraderie, togetherness, and team spirit when we all crossed the finishing line in Great Yarmouth was absolutely up there with the best.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, that with my family, I've cycled in various parts of the world. So anything that involves that, I like. Generally keeping fit. So any nature of keeping fit and traveling. I enjoy traveling. And
are you trying to master any new skills personally or in business?
It's tough enough just keeping on top of running the business,
just trying to survive,
and just trying to survive. So I wouldn't say mastering new skills, but obviously with culture and people, the environment is constantly changing, and we're trying to do things with artificial intelligence and machine learning and things like that as an organization. So I think you're always learning and things. And back to your question about outside of Proserv, I'm a bit of an avid whiskey collector stroke fan.
Okay.
I like to drink the stuff.
Yeah. I've got some nice bottles of whiskey.
So, but I'm going down to Lindores tomorrow. Have you heard of Lindores?
No.
It's the first recorded place of whiskey being made, and it's in Newborough in Fife. And I've got a number of casks there, so I'm going down tomorrow to bottle one of my earlier casks.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's Lindores whiskey, but it's my personal cask. So, and I did that 3 years ago, and I've given out most of those bottles to friends, family, through work as well, clients and stuff like that. So that's another way I like to relax outside of work as well. The only downside of it is my wife now likes whiskey. So the good bottles I now have to share.
Reducing.
Yes, correct.
And just for anybody trying to move into a leadership position, what would be your advice? Or in a leadership position, but maybe in a growing business?
Yeah. I think stay humble and treat people as you would want to be treated yourself. Okay, and I've seen a number of people who've gone up and they maybe get promoted to a level and they think they've made it,
Yeah.
and then they can become disrespectful to other people that they feel are lower down the organization. And there's no quicker way to lose the respect of the team than to lose that humbleness.
Yeah.
So I think no matter how high you go in an organization, keeping your feet grounded
Yeah.
and having that humility is absolutely critical. And you can only do that by treating people the way you would expect to be treated yourself.
Yeah, and it's been a good thing doing these podcasts because we've spoken to so many people, and so many people just want to give back or want to help, and it's a really good thing to see.
Yeah.
Davis, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Been a pleasure. Enjoyed it.